Hi, everyone. Thanks for waiting. It looks like we've got a good crowd today. My name is Nick Rudolph, and I am the Baltimore Regional Director with Maryland Capital Enterprises. Today, we're going to be talking about business plans and cash flow projections, specifically when you're looking for a loan. So, first, a little bit about who we are. Maryland Capital Enterprises. We're a nonprofit CDFI, a community development financial institution. And what that means is we're here to help small businesses. We are able to do loans for folks who might not be able to get a bank loan. We are also able to provide assistance with business plans, cash flows, marketing, all kinds of business related, small business related topics. All of that help is absolutely free, whether or not you apply for a loan with us. Now, we started 25, actually more than 25 years ago in 1998, just doing small loans on the Lower Eastern Shore. We grew, we developed a relationship with the SBA. We hopped over the bridge in 2012. And then in 2020, we became a women's business center in both Baltimore and Salisbury. So we can offer enhanced services to women and minority-owned businesses. To learn more about what we do, check out marylandcapital.org or Women's Business Center at marylandcapitalenterprises.org. So, what most people want to talk to us about is money. I totally get that. So we are an SBA intermediary microlender. Now, it doesn't mean that we loan SBA funds. In fact, the SBA very rarely funds loans, only in disasters like during the pandemic or after a hurricane. What they do is they back loans. So they trust us to do our homework, to give out good loans, but if something goes bad, they will give us back a percentage of it. Where we get our money from is other federal and state sources like U.S. Department of Treasury, the state of Maryland DHCD, and Department of Commerce. A lot of people know about the VLT funds from the slot machines. So we get all of that. And if you're approved for a loan, you're going to get the best money for you, lowest interest rate, longest term. But again, remember, we're here for you whether or not you are applying for a loan, and all of those services are free. So now we're going to get into talking about business plans and cash flows. We don't have a huge group today, so if you have questions, just feel free to unmute yourself and interrupt me. And then after every few sections, I'll stop and see if there are any questions and hopefully leave a little bit of time at the end. So the first thing before we even start looking at the cash flows and the business plans is to really look at how we are building the foundation of our small business. And even if you're already running your business, this is stuff you can be working on. So I like to think about it the same way I think about a building in downtown Baltimore. You'll see a lot with the fence around it, with a picture of a beautiful building saying that this is what's coming. And for 12, 18 months, nothing happens. What they're doing is they're building the foundation. They're doing all the environmental studies. They're making sure they have all their permits in order. They're making sure that everything is right so that when they start to actually do the build, it's going to pop up quickly, and 6 months later, it's going to be bustling and full. Think about your business the same way. The more time you spend building that foundation, the easier it's going to be to build that business. So, we're going to focus on writing a business plan to get a loan. So, what is a business plan and who needs a business plan? So, first of all, every business owner needs some kind of business plan. Even if you've been around for 20 years, you want to have, idea of what you're going to be doing in the next, 1 to 5 years. So, it's great for anybody who's a business owner. It's also great if you're looking for a loan or those very occasional grants that pop up. This is going to be what folks read to really learn about the business and learn about who you are. So you really want to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward and you're showing them that you know what you're doing. It's a blueprint for your business. So as you're starting, it should be a document that can help guide you as you're starting it. And as you're growing, it should be a document that helps you grow. But you also want to think of it as almost like a resume when you're considering your audience. And what that means is if you're going after a grant, you're going to want to focus on how you're hiring local and all the stuff you're doing in the community. And that stuff is important even if you're applying for a loan. But if you're going for a bank, the thing that they're most concerned about is, are you going to be able to repay that loan? So they're going to like that you're a great community member, but you really want to focus on your business savvy and your ability to make money when you're going for that loan. So, what are banks and CDFIs like us looking for when you're doing a loan? Well, the first question is, can you pay back the loan? And how we look at that is in a few different ways. Number one, passion. So what drew you to this business? Why are you doing what you're doing? Is it something that you're going to be willing to put in the amount of hard work that's needed to have a successful business? Then we're going to look at your expertise. Is this something you've been doing for 10 or 15 years? Did you just get your degree and you're ready to go? Or is it something you're interested in, but you're going to need a mentor or some sort of apprenticeship to get you going? Also, will you need training and certifications? And if you do you already have those? Or is this something that you're going to have to get as you're building your business? We also want to understand that you've done your research. You understand who your target customer is. You understand who your target market is. You understand that you have room in the market and you've got contingency plans in case things go wrong. And then one thing a lot of business plans lack is an ask. You really want to make sure that you, from the get-go, set those expectations for the reader so they know what kind of questions they're trying to answer as they're reading that business plan. So we break it up into four parts. You can tell your story better than we can. So if doing stuff in a different order makes more sense for you, go ahead and do that. What really is important is that all of this is in your business plan. So the first is the executive summary. Oftentimes people will write this last because it sort of is pulling from the rest of the business plan. But again, do whatever you feel comfortable doing there. The first thing you want to start off is with your opening presentation, your opening lines. You want to set the reader up. So what I would say is something like, and we're going to be doing a cash flows for a fake business I invented called Nick's Dill Pickles of Baltimore. So I'd say Nick's Dill Pickles of Baltimore LLC is owned by Nick Rudolph in Baltimore, Maryland. We do wholesale and farmers market pickle sales, and we are seeking a loan of $15,000 so that we can buy new pickling equipment. So right there, they know who I am, where I am, how I'm set up, what I do, and what I'm asking of the reader. That's going to really help them, really know what to look for as they're reading the rest. The rest of this, you kind of want to think of it as your elevator speech. This is your 30-second commercial. So the first thing you want to talk about is, your story. What drew you to your business? I really like pickles, so I got into pickling. But, you may have, grown up in a medical family and you've seen that there are some needs that assisted living facilities aren't meeting and you want to meet those needs. That can be why as well. Then you want to talk about what the business is specifically and what you're doing that's going to draw customers in. What is that special sauce that you have? You also want to then make a more detailed ask. Talk about specifically what you're going to do with those funds and why it's important. Then you want to talk about your marketing plan. This is usually the longest section of a business plan because it's way more than just advertising. So the first thing you want to do is describe your industry and show that it's growing or that there's room in the industry where you are for your business. And the way you do this is by just doing some Google research, looking up industry publications. Oftentimes chambers of commerce might have some market data and show that, yes, the need for wholesale pickles is going up 5% a year for some reason, so you have that. Then you want to talk about your target customer base. Now, anybody can purchase your goods or services, but who's going to be the people who are coming to your door every day, who are your bread and butter, the folks that if you can get them in, you're going to be successful. So if you have a salon in downtown Baltimore, you might say, look, my prime customer are, African American women between the ages of 25 and 55 who make between $75,000 and $200,000 per year. They've got money to do the disposable income. They're professionals, they're working downtown. Your convenience of being downtown might be what they want, but you know that anybody could walk in your doors and you'll take reservations, appointments from anybody. You also want to talk about your competition. No matter how unique your business is, there's somebody doing something similar. So list, three-ish competitors, talk about what they do well, and then talk about how you're going to compete in the market with them. And you also want to think about competition pretty broadly. We had somebody who opened up a comic book store, and two of their competitors were, local, pretty big comic book stores, and then they had Amazon because they acknowledge that just about everything they sell can be found on Amazon, and that what they have is that customer service. They've got that ability to make real recommendations in real time, and that's why people go to them. You also want to talk about your pricing. Are you high end? Are you middle of the road? Are you offering a value? And then after that, that's when you want to start thinking about how are we going to get the word out about our business? Does a social media campaign make sense? And if it does, exactly what is that going to look like? Are you in a business, where TV, and radio and old school newspaper ads make sense? Why is that? And then how are you going to do that? Or are you in a face-to-face and networking type business? You need to go, into the hospitals and talk to the doctors and nurses so they can refer their patients to your assisted living facility. Is it something like that? Is your marketing going to be more networking? How is that going to work? And how are you going to pay for that? The next section is your operations or your organization. So this is basically who you are and how you're going to do it. So again, talk about your legal structure. Then you want to talk about how the business is going to be run. Are you going to be a home-based business? Are you going to be a brick and mortar? Are you going to be some sort of combination of the two? Or are you going to be fully online? If you are brick and mortar, what are your hours? And if you're not, when are you going to be talking to the customers? When is your time off? Or are you available 24 hours a day? You want to think about, do you have employees? Will you need employees? And if you do, how are you going to structure it? Are you going to be running the show or are you going to train people to be doing the work while you're handling the back end stuff? How many employees will you have? How will you hire them? And will they be W-9 full employees or will they be 1099 contractors? So you want to think about, how you're going to pay for them, what those additional taxes, the workman's comp, all the insurance that you need if you're going to have those employees, which dovetails right into the insurance. Every small business, whether or not you have employees, is going to need some kind of general liability insurance. That can be as low as, $600 to $1,000 a year. But if you start adding things like working with kids, working with animals, having employees who drive, working with food or medicine, those insurance rates are going to go up. And you really want to make sure that you're talking to insurance agents before you need that insurance so that you can plan and know exactly how much you're going to need. Because the last thing you want to do is not be set up when an accident happens. And then, even though the business is an LLC, they're going to go after you personally. You also then want to talk about your growth. Are you planning to expand or do you just want to be, a mom and pop ice cream stand? And that's okay. Just how is that going to work? Your exit strategy. Are you doing this for the rest of your life and you want to hand it down to family? Or is this something you want to build? Are you a serial entrepreneur that's going to build a business, you're going to sell it, and then you're going to build another business? Or do you want to eventually turn this into a franchise model? How do you want to make this work? You also want to talk about your contingency plans. What if you're out for 3 weeks, 3 months, 6 months? How is your business is going to run? How do you have somebody trained that's going to be able to do the work for you? Are you going to have to do some work from that hospital bed? What is it going to be? Also, we are coming towards the end of the whole COVID-19 thing, but just talk about what happens if an employee or a customer tests positive if you're in a customer-facing type business. Then the next section is your financial plan. This is going to look different whether or not you are a startup or an existing business. So if you're a startup, you want to talk about those startup costs. If your equipment, that overhead, those first few weeks of salary, your inventory, all of that kind of stuff. You're also going to want to talk about your break-even point. Do you know how many sales you need to make a day, a week, a month in order to pay all your bills and pay yourself? We're also going to want to have your projections either as part of the business plan or a separate document. And that's what the second half of this presentation is going to be about, is going to be about developing those cash flow projections. And then you want to talk about your credit. So most loans are going to be personally guaranteed. If you know you've got some credit issues in your past, being upfront about it is the way to go because then we can find ways to mitigate it. If you tell us you've got an 800 credit score and we pull it and there's a bunch of missed payments and it's significantly lower than that, then that surprise is going to probably get you out of that loan. If you tell us you've got a low credit score, but this is how you're working to improve it, we might be able to still move forward with you. If you're an existing business, you're still going to want to have those costs for whatever it is that you're adding to the business. You're going to want to show us your break even, but we're going to want to see historic financial data as well, profit and loss statements, balance sheets, as an addendum, your taxes and your bank statements. So, same type of thing. It's just that you want to focus on what you have been doing and how you're going to build on that to grow, or, where you need to invest more so that you can grow to where you expected you'd be. So we're going to go on to cash flow projections in just a moment, but I wanted to see if there are any questions about the business plan before I move on. Nope. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and get into the cash flows. Cash flow projections, what are they and why do we need them? Well, what they are is they're showing you how much money is coming in, how much money is going to cost for your expenses, and then that's going to show you, what kind of profit that you're making. It's pretty simple. But as you can see on the screen here, the documents can be a little bit of scary with these spreadsheets, and we're going to do our best to make it a little bit less scary for you. So the first thing that we want to understand is that this is an estimate. This is a projection. You are not held to these numbers. You just want to make sure that you're being realistic. It's going to change over the life of the business because you never know when certain items might become more expensive for you or less expensive for you. So not only will not all of the cells be right, most of them are going to be different in reality. Now, the way that you make this work for you is you be as detailed as possible. And what you want to do is you want to break up your income in as many ways as possible, and then you want to break up your expenses in as many ways as possible. That way you can get the best idea of what your business is doing as you're moving forward and where you might need to do some investments or some cuts. So if you've got a business that's a restaurant, you may decide you want to break it up, dine in, carry out, or catering. But if you have a bar in that restaurant, you might break it up between food and liquor. And you might say, look, I think we're going to be 70% food and 30% liquor. And 6 months into it, you're looking at your numbers and you're really more 60-40. Then you can start looking at the money coming in and the money going out and start asking yourself, is the issue that we need to do better with the food program? Or is the drink program so strong that it makes more sense to invest in that because that's what we're known for? Having a detailed cash flow is going to allow you to figure that out. You also want to make sure you're dealing with things if your business changes month to month. If you're a landscaper, your April and May is probably going to be busier than your December. So you want to make sure that you're showing that. And then also make sure you're paying yourself. You need to live, you need to eat, you need clothes, you need to have a little bit of fun. So we're going to want to make sure that you're paying yourself as well. So why do we need to do these? Well, first of all, if you want a loan, you're going to need them. Also, as I said, it's that planning tool. It's that good governance. It lets you know what you expect to do, then you can see how you did it, and you can make changes based on that. It's also going to show you when you can start taking money out, the difference between the cash flow and the profit. So if you've got $1 million coming in a week, but it's costing you $1.1 million to do the services, you don't have a good cash flow. And then you can make some changes to make sure that you're doing the right thing. So, what are you going to need to fill it out? You're going to need a template. You're going to need to know how much you have in the bank for the business. You want to know about all your estimated income and expenses. If you're going to have a payroll, you want to include your loan as income and your loan payments as expenses. And then you want to know your inventory cost. If I'm selling a widget for $10, how much am I paying for it? So we're now going to do a cash flow spreadsheet for Nick's Dill Pickles of Baltimore. So excuse me just one moment while we switch pages. All right, so now we've got Nick Stills of Baltimore, and we are going to do a cash flow. Hopefully everybody's got a big enough screen where you can see this, but again, I will be emailing this so that everybody can get a copy of it. So this is a small part-time business. This is done in the evenings after I get out of my full-time job. So we're not going to be doing enough money to, raise a family off of in this. We're just going to do it so we can show you how this works. I do not have a pickling business. I don't know how much any of this stuff costs. These are all completely made up numbers. It's just to show you how the cash flow is going to work. So I'm going to pretend I've got $0 to start out with, and I'm going to be asking for a loan of $15,000. Um, all right. So now we're going to break up our income. So I'm going to sell at farmers markets. I'm going to sell wholesale, and I'm going to sell online because why not? So again, we're just doing made up numbers. Um, we are going to say we're not making any money in year one. The reason for that is in month one, I'm sorry, is because we're putting everything together. But, as we see here, we're in February. We're going to start doing farmers markets in February because in Baltimore and Waverly, there's a year-round farmers market that does pretty well. I'm averaging 4 weekends a month there, especially for February. But I'm probably not going to do super well. People don't know me yet, so I'm going to say $1,000 there. I'm not going to have talked to any restaurants yet, so I'm not doing any wholesale. But my family is going to be here to help me out, and they're going to give me 500 bucks. Um, all right, I seem to have lost my cursor. There we go. So the next month, the weather's getting a little bit nicer. I'm getting a little bit more known. So we're gonna just bump that up a bit. One restaurant came by, liked my pickles, and they're doing a $250 a month contract. And the online sales probably aren't going to change very much. April, the weather is much nicer. I've got the word more out about me, so I'm going to grow even more. Then I am going to go to my wholesale. I'm just going to add one restaurant a month, and we're going to keep that $500. May, the other farmers market is opening. It's much, much bigger. We're going to see a lot more people coming in, a lot more money. So I think that that's going to actually jump up to $5,000. Again, I'm just adding one restaurant a month and keeping my online sales the same. June, all of the farmers markets are up for all the weekends, so I'm going to see a nice increase there. Then we are going to get into July. Again, it's vacation season. People are coming in for Orioles games. These are nice things that you can bring back home. We're going to see a big jump. We're going to add another restaurant and we're going to stay at the 500. Then we are going to, in August, see another bit of growth there. And then we are going to get into September. Now we're getting into back to school. It's still nice out, but there's, things going on the weekends. So, I see a little bit of a dip there, but I'm still going to add a restaurant and still have my 500 a month. October, it's getting to the fall. There's people who are getting ready for the sort of holiday dinner. So we might see a bit of a bump there. Um, get that $2,000. Again, $500. We'll just bring that over. And then 2250, 2500. Now, November, it's getting a little bit colder, so we're going to start going down. December, we're going to go down even more. Okay. Oops, somehow that stopped sharing. Okay. Alrighty, so then we're going to start going to the inventory cost. So we're going to do that as a sum, and it's going to be all of our income except for our loans. So that is going to be C13 through, and this will be done on the spreadsheet for you, not 213, just 13 through C17. And then I'm just going to say that it costs, about a 33%, to make it. So we're going to multiply that by 33%. Okay, so then we're going to talk about employees. Now, I probably would just have family doing this in a real situation, but we are going to want to have some money here. First few months, I'm going to be on my own for real though. But once it starts to get a little bit bigger, I'm going to pay folks about 15 bucks an hour. I'm not going to need them full time or anything. So, maybe $600 a month. All right. So we do our payroll expenses. Again, these would be contractors, but just showing them as employees, we assume 10%. So then we are going to go into our, we're not going to have a trash service. Office supplies are going to be sort of pens, papers, printer, that kind of stuff. So, the kickoff cost is going to be about $1,500, and that should cover us for the year. Don't have any subscriptions. I don't need a storage space. I am going to start off with some advertising, maybe 150 in the first few months, bring it down to 100. Distribution, folks are going to be paying their own shipping, so I'm not going to put anything there. And then accounting and legal. I don't have a lawyer, I don't have an accountant, but I want to save some money every month so that we can do that if we want to. Um, just one second. All right, we're just gonna have to do it. I'm sorry, buddy. My cursor has seemed to disappear on my computer. All right. So rent, I'm going to be cooking in a ghost kitchen, evening only. I did check this out about a year or so ago. That's about 500 a month. Um, that's going to include all of my utilities. It's going to include all of my water, heat, the storage in there. But if you had other storage facilities, you'd of course use those. I'm going to just use a Google Voice on my regular phone, so that's going to be free. My insurance, there is going to be some food involved, so I'm just going to say 200 bucks a month. My taxes, that's going to be an annual fee for the state of $3,300. I don't need professional fees. And then my loan payments. Well, I did the math. I thought 15,000 for 3 years at 8%. And that is about $407 a month. I didn't start it in month one or two because there's usually a little bit of a grace period. I don't have other debts. I haven't taken out any loans yet, but now I need to buy that equipment that I'm using the loan for. So about 12,000 of that 15,000 is going to be used to buy that. The rest is what we call working capital. So that's money that I will, use for initial inventory, for initial farmers market fees, things like that. So one thing that I don't have on here is the farmers market fees. So I am going to add that here. Again, this is going to be a totally made up number. So I'm going to do $100 a month. And then when they're both open, I'm going to do 200 a month. Okay. So then we get down to this bottom number here that's highlighted. So what we're seeing here is, each month we've brought in some money and we actually have starting from zero, a little bit of money in the bank every month till the end of the year when we've got $33,000 in the bank. So let's see if I can do this. All right. So now I'm going to go to year two. It's 33,453 and paste it. We'll start at 32, 453. Um, all right, hold on just one second. Sorry, but it closed on me. All right, there we go. All right, so then we're just going to assume sort of, sticking at 6,500 because I've known now. And then I'm just going to do my addition. All right. So as you will see, we're not going to need we're not going to need another loan. Um, those expenses of the amount that costs to make meat is not going to change. I'm going to stick to about 600 bucks a month for employees. Um, I'm not going to have to buy computers again, so that's going to drop down significantly for the year. I'm going to stick to 100 bucks a month for advertising. Um, this will all stay the same. Um, we will be making our payments though. We're not going to have our startup costs, but I am going to do a reserve of $6,000 in case anything breaks. So now at the end of the year, I've got $86,000 left. So I can pay myself, $3,000 a year, and take my family on a really nice vacation or, cut down my hours at the other job or whatever it is, because my business is doing pretty well. So even if I'm paying myself that $36,000 for the year, I still have $50,000 in the bank for my business. And that's pretty good for a little part-time business. Now, I know all of your businesses are going to be different than this. This is something that us and me and more folks on the staff can do with you specifically for your business. Um, One-on-one for free. Just email me or email the info at marylandcapital.org and we can get you set up with that. So now we're going to go towards to the end of the presentation. A few things that you want to remember that's really important is number one, bringing that year end to the starting of the new year. So you don't want to start off at $0 in the bank in year two when you've really got 33,000 in the bank. You also want to make sure you're not taking out too much or too little of an owner's draw so that it's either impacting your business negatively or impacting your life negatively. You want to make sure that you've got money in there for your accountants, your legal, and your marketing. All of that are necessary and investments in your business. You want to be careful not to have a negative cash flow for too long. Sure, in the first few months, you might take a while to get above water, but if it's still after 6, 8, 12 months losing money, you want to look at what you're doing. Again, you want to keep your loan payments um, as your expenses and your loan as your income. And then you want to have realistic expectations. So we don't want to see that you're going to make $1 billion in year one with your small business because that's going to scare away the loan committee who makes the decision. We want to see in a worst case scenario that you're going to be able to make what you need to survive. And if you do any better than that, then that's absolutely great. So, if you're working with one of us and you say you're going to be doing $60,000 a month and we advise you do it a little bit less than that, there's a reason for that. So, what are you going to do with these? You're going to use it as part of your loan application, part of your getting some credit, getting a grant. You're going to use it to make sure that your goals are met. And if they're not, you can make the changes that you need to make. It's going to show you when you're ready to grow. And you're also going to update it from time to time. Now let's talk about funding, the most important thing. So, what do you need to get a loan from us or most other CDFI? So there's going to be for us, it's all done online. We have a client intake form. That's where we find out the baseline about you. We get you set up with a business consultant who's going to help you pull all of the rest of this together. We are also going to have an online business loan application. This is for new or existing businesses or for our smaller credit builder loan. And then a personal information supplement. These are all going to be links. Each business needs one of each, except for the personal information supplement. Anybody who owns 20% or more of the business is going to need to fill that out. The supporting documents, and there are going to be opportunities to upload those on the business loan application, are going to be your business plan, your cash flows, some sort of proof that you've been turned down for a loan. That doesn't mean that you've had to gone through a whole process. If you talk to a bank and they say, look, we just don't do startups, just get that documented, that's good enough. If you've been around, we're going to want to see your profit and loss for 2 years, your quarterly balance sheet, your business taxes, and your business bank statements. No matter what, for anybody who owns 20% or more of the business, we're going to want to see your personal bank statements and 3 months of personal, your 3 months of personal bank statements and 2 years of personal tax returns. Everything else here is optional. Reference letters are really great to have. If you've got any leases, LOIs, estimates, licenses, contracts, invoices. If you got your website done, show us that. Like anything that's going to help tell your story in a positive way, share with us. If there's not a place to upload it on the application, you can always just email it to us. Now, what are we looking for? Again, you've been turned down by another lender. You've got a thorough business plan. You've got experience in the field or a way to gain that. The strength and realisticness of your cash flow. We do require collateral for these loans. So, is it the full amount? Is it strong collateral like real estate? We can get really flexible though. So even if you think you don't have collateral, you might. Reasonable credit, as you can see here. It doesn't have a credit score. We don't have a minimum score. What we're looking at is really what's been going on in the last 12, 18, 24 months. We're looking for things like missed payments and past due amounts. There are a few disqualifiers, however. If you've had a bankruptcy discharged in the last 24 months, or you have a tax debt without a payment plan, we cannot close a loan with you. With that tax debt, we can, work with you. You can apply for the loan, but until you get that plan set up, we cannot close the loan. We're also looking for the general economic conditions for the venture. What does that mean? That means this is the right time and the right place to be starting this small business. If that could be the general economy. That can be, if you're opening up the fourth burger shop on a block, how are you going to compete with the other folks? Is this the right place for that business? And then we're looking at your ability to repay the loan. If the business is not successful, can you get back in the workforce and pay back that loan? So now let's talk about what kind of loans we do have. First, our regular small business loans, depending on the length of your business, you can get up to about $150,000. If you've been around for 2 or less years, it's going to be significantly less, near the $35,000 mark. The term's going to be based on the size of the loan. A $15,000 loan would probably be 3 years. 50,000 would be 6 or 7. Anything over 100 would be 10 years. Our interest rates are generally 6 to 12%. Lately, I've been seeing them mostly go out sort of in the 8, sometimes 7, sometimes 9% range. Collateral is required, as I said. If you have real estate, we're going to need a appraisal that's 1 year old or newer, but don't get that until you're approved for the loan. As I said, anybody who owns 20% or more of the loan is going to have to personally guarantee it. If you've got so many owners that nobody owns 20%, we're going to want to see 3 or 4 folks personally guarantee the loan. There is an application fee. It's $100 plus $25 per owner for the credit report. We only do TransUnion, and it is a soft pull. We will give you a full copy of your credit report. There are closing fees. Generally, a $50,000 loan goes out, you 48,250 or so. It's deducted from the proceeds of the loan. You don't need to bring a check. We do automatic payments from your business checking account every month, either on the 1st or the 15th. We can work with you to figure out that day. If you cannot make a payment and you know a week ahead of time and you let us know, we will figure something out. We'll go interest only. We'll defer a payment. We'll even restructure a loan. However, if you're doing really well and you just want to pay off the loan, as long as it's 30 days older or older, you're able to pay it off with no payments just for the full principal balance that you have left. We're going to visit you twice a year. That could be virtual or in person. We're going to want to see your books, talk to you about how your business is doing, and then talk to you about any resources we may have for you. The big question is my business eligible and what can I spend this on? So most business-related expenses are okay with it. There are a few exceptions. Number one, if you're a home-based business, we can't pay your mortgage, rent, or utilities. If you are in the business where you're in real estate investment, we can't purchase property that your office is not going to be located in. We cannot rehab property that your office is not going to occupy at least 51% of. But we can do things like build out your office. We can buy your trucks, your big reusable equipment. So, think, power saws, yes, drywall, no. As far as business types, any type of small business in Maryland, in one of our counties, and our counties are the Eastern Shore, Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Anne Arundel County, Harford County, and Cecil County. There are just a few exceptions. Those are those traditional sin industries, adult bookstores, 100% alcohol, 100% tobacco. We are, however, able to work with medical and recreational cannabis. We also have one other loan, which is our credit builder loan. This is for folks who either have no credit or want to improve their credit. for folks who want to dip their toe into entrepreneurship. I'm really good at detailing my friends' cars. Let me get some equipment, but just a little bit to see if I can turn this into a job. And then also, folks who have an established business that have some sort of quick turnaround emergency, a tree root growing through a pipe or something like that. The terms are going to generally be 2 years. The interest rate is at 9%. We don't require collateral, but it is encouraged. Everything else is the same except for much lower fees, with a $50 application fee and $75 closing costs. Um, this is a good way to improve your credit, to get a finance relationship with us, or to show a bank that you could pay back a loan. Before I take this off, are there any questions about the loans or the cash flows? Alrighty, so before I end, there's just a few little things I like to say at the end of all my presentations. Number one, there is nowhere else in the country with more free small business resources than where you are right now. Take advantage of all of us. You've got us. Most of your libraries are going to have a small business center. Each county is going to have an economic development organization. Most of them have chambers of commerce. The Maryland Department of Commerce might be where you can find those grants when they are there. The Maryland Small Business Development Center, that's part of the SBA. You can get a one-on-one mentor for free there. There's all kinds of SBA things. You also want to look at your local universities. We work a lot with Morgan State and Salisbury. Even if you didn't go there, they're always looking for, internships, for classes to help do marketing, all kinds of things. And then, your local business organizations. Is there a Main Street? Is there a downtown partnership? If it is, how can you get involved in those? So, the five things that we like to remember before applying for capital. Number one, keep your day job until your business can pay for your expenses. It's also going to help you get your loan easier if you've got income coming in. You need an accountant, even if you are an accountant. Really, as you're growing your business, you're going to get in the weeds. You don't want to miss any deadlines and get out of good standing that you're not eligible for loans and things like we have. As I said in that last slide, there's nowhere better to ask for help than where you are. So talk to all of us. We all have different experiences. Learn as much as you can. Keep your money in your bank. If you're applying for a business loan, it's not the time to buy a car. It's not the time to open a credit card. It's not the time to buy a house, unless, of course, you have to. There are, extenuating circumstances. So you just want to make sure that you're not doing much with your money as you're applying for that loan. And then be part of your community. No business is an island. Give to local charities, sponsor a local softball team. Do whatever it is that you need to do to make people feel proud to come into your business because you're a part of their community. Um, we also have a few more, actually nothing else this year, but through January and February, we've got a bunch of small business free webinars. I'll be doing first steps on January 26th. On the 27th and February 3rd, there's the DBE, MBE, SBE workshops. Those are great. And if you're ever working with the government, that SAM.gov one is really going to be helpful. With that, I will go ahead and say goodbye. But are there any questions before we stop? Up, Alberta, go ahead and just unmute yourself.
Yeah, I have a quick question about the cash flow sheet. When you add the insurance on there, would workers' comp like go on there as well? And like let's just say, for example, you did have to make payments because someone got hurt. Would you put that on the cash flow sheet as well?
Sure. So if you have that as a real expense, then yes, you want to add that. In general, we include the like, when something hasn't yet happened, we include the workman's comp in that sort of payroll tax bracket that we have on there. All right. And y'all can just unmute yourselves. You don't need to raise your hands.
Okay. Hi, good afternoon. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much. I wanted to ask well, one of the slides you had mentioned that MCE does provide loans for business that are less than 2 years.
Yes, we do startups. Yep,
Oh,
absolutely. Yep, up to $35,000 ish about. There's a little wiggle room there.
okay. So it's just to get an understanding, 0 months to 24 months, basically.
Yeah, as long as you're registered, you're eligible.
Okay. Thank you
Yep,
so much.
yep, sure.
Hi Nick,
Any
I
other?
have a quick question. Okay.
Sure.
You said you offer one-on-one your MCE offer one-on-one consultation
Yes.
after this workshop.
Yep. So the best way to start off for that is either send me an email to that nrudolph@marylandcapital.org on the screen, or if you
Okay.
go to our website on the top right-hand corner, there's a Get Started Here button, because that's what I'll be doing is sending you that link. And that's our client intake form. At that point, a business consultant will be in touch with you within 3 days to get started on your plan.
Okay. And then we're going to get a copy of this presentation after?
Yep. Yep. And
Okay.
we'll get you the blank spreadsheet, the spreadsheet that we did, and the presentation, and then the video will be up on YouTube.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Nope. Well, I always think of my best questions when these things end. So feel free to contact me directly at the nrudolph@marylandcapital.org, or just contact us through the website at marylandcapital.org. Thank you all for spending your lunch break with me. Hopefully you can take these extra 10 minutes and stretch or have a little bit of relaxation. I hope to see you all in the first steps in the new year. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.